Hey everyone, it's Julie. This episode of the Grow Your Occupancy Podcast dives more deeply into resolving the occupancy puzzle. This topic is a favorite, a must review and practice, and it's closing. I review coaching questions if you are a coach or a mentor, questions to ask others that prompt a better discussion and better skill set building around closing and addressing those not ready yet. And also, so the coaching of it and also the doing of it. The recap, give advice, pause, the power of the pause. They agree, great. If they don't, the disarm and the redirect. So very important, always a hot topic, closing and addressing objections and coaching others to do the same. Hope you enjoy. Thanks so much for listening. I really appreciate you all.
This episode of the Grow Your Occupancy Podcast is sponsored by Yardi. The Yardi Senior Living Suite combines resident care, marketing, sales, finance, business intelligence, pharmacy, and operations, all on a Cloud Forbes 100 ranked, cloud-hosted HIPAA and SOX compliant software platform. The suite of products is single stack, uniting on a fully integrated platform. It offers intuitive functionality that helps provide the best care and improved health outcomes across your communities.
Hi, welcome to another episode of the Grow Your Occupancy Podcast. I'm Julie Podewitz. Today is a solo episode continuing on resolving the occupancy puzzle. Focus is a very popular one today, which is closing, advising to next steps, and coaching others to this very important skill. It's important when you're doing it, when you're coaching, closing, or advising, to keep in mind the fundamentals of strong advising. The first is a recap. So starting the conversation, whether it's in person, on the phone, this is a great best practice for all kind of meetings or one-on-ones to recap. What did you hear? And what did you see? What did you hear? Setting the stage for what's to come next. I'm really big on verbiage. So for the close, keep in mind it's important to train yourself to start with something like, based on what I'm hearing, based on what we discussed, I heard you say. I like based on what I'm hearing, or based on everything discussed today. That kind of segue verbiage will trigger, if you will, a recap. That's the skill set, right? That's what you want to do, is to recap what's been heard, what's been discussed. So again, based on what I'm hearing, or based on what we discussed, based on what I heard you say, is, and then a strong recap. It's not a needs match or repeat needs or repeat everything you heard. It's a summary, more of a reflection, so that when you are stating a next step or giving advice, it makes sense. It makes sense based on what was discussed. So instead of, hey, let's go ahead and blank, or what you need to do next is blank, you're giving a quick recap. So therefore, next step is what? So the first step in closing or advising is the recap. Practice, practice, practice. On page 126 of the Resolving the Occupancy Puzzle book, I provide questions, coaching questions to support strong closing. When you are either doing it, but more importantly, when you're coaching others, one of the most important questions to ask is, what advice was given to the family? What advice was given to the prospect? Very often we say, well, what was the agreed upon next step? That's not a bad question. To me, that skips an essential part of this entire process, which is, well, what advice did you give? Did that family agree to that? Yes or no? If they didn't, that's hesitation, right? And that is a disarm, a redirect, which we'll talk about a little bit more in a next podcast. But what advice was given? So when you're asking, if you're a coach, if you're executive director, colleague, hey, what advice did you give? That helps us all keep in mind that we're responsible, the sales director, whomever's working with the family, or if you're the coach, what advice did you give? What do they need to do, decide, or think about? If you don't know, they likely don't. So be the strong advisor in providing that next step, that next decision. If it's not an actual to do, it's something to think about, something to consider, and you're basing it on everything that was heard. So, what advice was given? That's a great coaching question. As an executive director, and those post-tour prospects, hey, what advice did you give the family? What advice was given? Did they agree to that or not? Really important to continue asking, really important to continue discussing, because the questions you ask help focus on what's important, and then what's important is what advice, what did you provide as far as do, decide, or think about. What does a family need? Again, to do, decide, or think about. What literally needs to happen? What needs to happen next? When we say, oh, we're going to invite mom in for an event, why? What needs to happen? Does it help her inch forward? I mean, why are you inviting her to an event? Why are you looping mom in? And it sounds like, well, yeah, of course that's logical, but state it out loud. It sounds like you're farther along in this process than maybe your mom. One way we can help her inch forward is to engage her more in what we have going on at the community. Or one way is to introduce her to one of our residents. One way is to have her come in and experience what you've experienced today. Then you can say, all right, here's a couple of suggestions. What does the prospect think about moving? Have they agreed? These are coaching questions to ask. How many influencers are involved? How aligned are the influencers? What do they like best about your community? Why are they thinking about moving in? Why have they decided on your community? Has a prospect decided to leave home? That's not open-ended, but have they decided? Did we confirm? Was that confirmed that yes, they are leaving? Have they picked out an apartment? Yeah, that one's farther down the funnel. What's the timeline? What's a timeline? And what's the confirmation on that timeline? I'm curious, what made them choose our community? These are questions, coaching questions that help further discussion. It's not a, hey, gotcha, or I'm going to put you on the spot, but it's rather than, a discussion like, hey, why did they decide on our community? I don't know. Well, again, food for thought, right? It could be a great question to ask a prospect, either during or after the process. What decision does a family need to make? Yeah, exactly. We want them to move into our community. Is that the next decision? To move to the community, or what needs to happen first? Just kind of put yourself in their shoes. what literally needs to happen next. Literally, or emotionally, what needs to happen. They need to be what? Bought in, or they need to confirm that mom or the person, whoever it is going to leave. Whether or not how painful that decision is, yes, where staying home is not the best option. Living in a community, particularly your community, is the best option moving forward. Recap, 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 reflect. So I'm hearing you say, this is a tough decision moving forward. So so you are all aligned on it's not best for your mom to move forward to live at home, but she's still digging her heels in. It's okay to reflect on what are you hearing so that you can like, okay, so you're all aligned, but your mom is digging her heels in. Let me just ask, right? So that you're confirming where you are in the conversation. Ask them, what if she decides never to move? What if she digs her heels in forever? Or what would, if it were up to you, what would you like your mom to do? What decision, if it were completely up to you, what decision would you make? Being really confident around the recap, reflections, the disarm, redirect, allow people the chance to talk through. The more confident you are, the more confident you are in coaching others, the greater chance we have of engaging other people to help talk through, okay, talk through their journey. It's very common to need to say things out loud. And very oftentimes we're not given the platform to kind of talk through what we're thinking. And we're all jumping to some type of conclusions and to some assumptions. And we're thinking other people are thinking those same things. And then where there's confusion and I thought, or I assumed, and we're misaligned. Just say it out loud. Say it out loud. It takes practice. It does take practice as a coach, as a sales director. I mean, it really does take practice, but I'm challenging all of us to practice this. Why did they choose your community? These are other coaching questions. What have they told you? What's most important to them? What concerns are they sharing? Very oftentimes, objections are maybe they're said, but maybe they're implied. And then we are like, oh, I'm not comfortable with these objections, so I'm going to avoid them. And we're going to kind of walk around them, and maybe we can circumvent the tough conversations or the tough discussions. And my challenge to all of us is to address as much as we can with respect and with empathy and without judgment, allowing others to talk about what's on their mind, both from a coaching perspective, from a sales director to a prospective resident perspective, from all of our perspectives. It sounds easier than maybe it is in reality. But if that's your intention to keep the air open for discussion, the greater chance we have of this really happening. On page 127 on resolving, if you have the other version of the book, maybe a slightly different page, I talk about opening a call. And we'll talk a little bit more about this in another podcast, but opening a call it's so simple, but it does take a lot of practice. And a lot of people don't know how to just open a call with a statement of fact and pause. So I understand you're researching options. it's been a while since we connected about your mom moving to senior living. You spoke with, insert aggregator here. You spoke with recently, pause. You requested a tour. I understand you were researching options. Could be, I understand it's been a while, or you can even say it's been a while since we connected about your mom. You've been researching options for several months now. Statement of fact, pause. It sounds so simple, and it is, but it's challenging to actually do this because it's not something that we're necessarily I don't want to say conditioned, but we're not necessarily practiced in doing. Statement of fact, pause. Allow the other person to think about who you are. What did you say? Give them a second. Oh, right. Yeah. Well, we thought about it and we're going to stay at home right now. Or, oh, yeah, well, that was a while ago. Or what do you have for me today? And be ready with a question or a reason to engage. That's on us. That's the planning piece of making the outbound call and having the objective in interacting with the individual. In closing, okay, of this short podcast about closing, this is going to be on page 128 and 129 of Resolving the Occupancy Puzzle. The practice of closing, if you are not, the practice of closing is critical. And every time you do it in real life, that's a practice, right? But my challenge to anyone listening is to literally practice. Ask someone to listen to you. Maybe record it, I don't know, on your phone so you can hear yourself practice your close. You think, oh, I'm really uncomfortable with that. My challenge is, yeah, I hear you, I get it, but the more uncomfortable you are and the more you lean in, the greater chance you have of growing your skills. Recap based on what I'm hearing or based on our conversation or based on our meeting today, based on what I'm here, what you've told me. It sounds like, go ahead and recap. Sounds like you've been under a lot of stress. It sounds like there's multiple decision makers. It sounds like there's a lot on your plate. It sounds like you've seen a lot of changes with your mom. Summarize. Then you're going to put a little detail, not every single thing you heard. So my advice is, or the next step is, or let's go ahead and you're going to give them something to think about. You got to give them advice. Be confident. You're the expert. They've come to you. They do not have to take your advice. It's up to us to give it, for them to either take it or not. And then I suggest on page 129 is giving some options, and this can be certainly not applicable to 100% of the next steps or the advice given, but today or tomorrow, next week or this week, morning or afternoon, here at the community or at your mom's house. Do you want to talk to your family alone, or I'm happy to be in on that conversation. Later in the day or early morning, what works better for you, giving them a couple of options. Sometimes people are more willing to kind of like give an answer to a multiple choice than they are of, hey, what time works better for you? Some people are going to tell you what works better for them. If you hear hesitation, go ahead and give them a couple of options. In closing, I can't express enough how important practice is. Being confident. People want to take advice from someone who is really confident, someone who's an expert in in this case, in senior living, in assisted living, independent living, retirement living, memory care, you're going to be really confident as you're practicing. You're sounding very convicted in your recap, your next step. If you need to give them a couple of options to pick from, if you're hesitant, I'm not sure. If you're hesitant, how hesitant can they be? Or how confident, I should say, are they? Right? So the more confident you are, the greater chance you have of others having confidence in you. And it really is practicing and doing something in real life is practicing too. So advising verbiage is my advice is let's go ahead and look at the next step, something to consider, or let's see, why don't you go ahead and blank? Very assumptive, very confident in allowing others to be in control of what they do, decide, and think about. You are and continue to be their advisor. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Grow Your Occupancy Podcast on closing and next steps from the Resolving the Occupancy Puzzle book. I'm Julie Podewitz. I appreciate you all so much. Thank you.
This episode of the Grow Your Occupancy Podcast is sponsored by Yardi.